Hi, everyone. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 7 of Morning Matcha. I'm here today with Vanessa Cuccia, who's the founder and creator of Shock Rubs, the original crystal sex toy company. Hi, Vanessa.
Hi.
So thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's so nice to be here in New York, and it's such a nice day, and
It
I'm
is.
so glad this worked out.
Me too. Really glad.
So I want to get into all things Shock Rubs, but I want to first start with, obviously I want to figure out how it all started for you and what your background is. And I know that you worked at a sex toy shop and you also lived with, is it a spiritual
Teacher?
Yeah. So tell me how you ended up at the sex toy shop, because that's not like a normal job, you know? And so how were you open enough to find a job like that, and what you learned and what just like bridging into Shock Rubs?
Definitely. When I moved out to LA, I was pursuing a career in music. I'm a musician, actually. So I had a lot of odd jobs. I worked as a fairy for children's birthday parties every weekend, dressing up and, doing little tea parties.
Aww.
And I worked at the School of Rock, teaching music. And so I did a bunch of little odd jobs like that. And when I was taking the job at the Pleasure Chest, the sex toy shop, I saw that they were hiring on like a Facebook post. And at that time, I was getting out of a relationship that I had been in for 6 years, realizing that I was basically in a sexually abusive relationship without really acknowledging that. And so I realized that I had these sexual traumas and I wanted to heal. And part of that process was being open to learning about sexuality. So this job at the sex toy store was really perfect because everybody at the Pleasure Chest is so sex positive, extremely knowledgeable. And I was working in the back in the web order fulfillment section. So I was talking to customers on the phone and reading all the books on sexuality that they had when things were slow. And I was also living with a spirituality teacher who had a really, really popular program on YouTube. And he ended up living with me and taught me a lot about energy healing and crystals and the chakra system. And
how was that? That was just randomly happened that you guys...
Kind of randomly. A friend of mine sent me one of his videos on YouTube and I loved it. And then he put the word out that he was going to be traveling through LA. And I reached out and was like, you can stay with me. I had a spare bedroom. So yeah, he lived with me for a while and we just, talked a lot about things. And I was trying to open up this, my spirituality. I had closed it off for so long because when I was young, my mother had gone through a spiritual awakening that like kind of scared me and like our family, which is like a whole other thing.
We have to hear about that.
So that was a big part of like, I had been closed off for very long. So I was going through a lot of awakenings, spiritually, sexually. And then at the sex toy store, I had access to all these amazing products. I had everything under the sun, but I couldn't connect on an emotional level to any of the products. And I realized that I needed more than a great orgasm or whatever. I needed to reconnect to my body since I had been learning subconsciously to disassociate from my body during sex with my boyfriend. So it was just one night when I was with my spiritual friend and we went to this woman's house and she had a bunch of crystals, and it's a little out there, but it was very much a eureka moment where I just felt like the crystals were like Shock Rubs. It fell into my head and I was like, oh, I could use crystal as a material for sex toys, and that would give me what I was needing, which was that emotional support and spiritual opening, so I just thought of that name right there. And
that's incredible.
Yeah, started thinking
about it. And had you known about yoni eggs and people using jade eggs previously?
No,
or just
I actually hadn't heard about that till after I started shock rubs. And, you know, I was very much so about the pleasure aspect. And then, yeah, people started asking, do you have yoni eggs? So I started providing those to my customers as well. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back really quick to your mom's spiritual awakening because I'm so curious about that. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about your childhood too. And if that had anything to do with any of your sexual traumas or.
It does. I mean, I think that everything in my life kind of led up to me creating this company because I mean, I talk about how living on Long Island, we lived near the bluffs and my family would go and, you know, we would crack open geodes on the beach. And that was like my first introduction to crystals. And I loved that. And that really spoke to this part of me that wanted magic to be real. And then discovering like these crystalline structures and these seemingly ordinary rocks was real magic to me as a child.
Yeah.
So that stuck with me. And then in around 1992, I was 4 years old and my mother started having paranormal experiences where she would basically, the language gets fuzzy because she doesn't use certain language. We don't, you know, say anything is definitely what it is because when you talk about spiritual things, you know, it's very, so anyway, she started having experiences that led her to be very clairvoyant and our whole family started seeing things basically in our house. Helicopters, black helicopters would circle our house in the neighborhood. We're like
real ones? Or?
Oh yeah, like actual helicopters where the neighbors would be like, what's going on with your house? So she was channeling music actually, and she came out with some meditation music and a concept CD called Abduction. So that kind of gives you a little bit of insight as to what it was about, but that's really her story to tell. But it was, you know, in the house, we were very open to talking about things that we cannot see. And yet.
And your parents are together? Or?
They're not together anymore, but
at the time.
At the time they were.
And everyone was kind of on the same level.
Oh yeah. I mean, we knew something very strange was going on. And my mother became basically a spokesperson because many people had similar experiences at that time that also had 3 daughters, which my mother does, and just a lot of weird things. So we were all open to the fact that there's things out there that you can't see all the time. But I think that being that I was so young and it was like this mystery that was basically never solved, I kind of shut down a part of my own spirituality. And so a reason why crystals always attracted me was because there's something tangible I could touch, be connected to spirituality, but I could see it. And, you know, when I was young, I would like pray like, okay, spirits, if you're going to like show yourself to me, come to my dreams so that I'm not scared. Like I was scared to see things, you know?
I'm still scared. Like last night I couldn't sleep because we just like started following this guy on Twitter who apparently has a ghost living in his house.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's scary. I mean, you know, there's so much that we don't know. And yeah, so I understand.
Wow. So you shut that part off, but the crystals were what really spoke to you and what kept that part of you kind of alive and curious.
Yeah. It just, for me, it was something. I like that I could hold a crystal in my hand and feel connected to spirit and yet be very grounded. So they're very grounding, you know, which is an element that I like.
So how did you go ahead and like develop the shock rubs and create all the, you know, I love the size of the yoni eggs. Like I use it personally and I love that it's drilled because I put the hemp beeswax, is it hemp beeswax, beeline in through it, and it really like makes me feel confident that it's not going to get stuck or freaky. But
good.
I want to learn more about the development process after that initial like I know that I need to do this feeling that you had, and then
Sure. So Right. So I came up with the concept when I was, living with the spiritual teacher and working at the sex toy store. And I just knew that this is what I was going to do. So I started talking to people about it. I started allowing it's funny because the business side of it is actually something that I really like too, because it was very, attracting energy to me working with the crystals, on a business level. So I started, it was just so innate in me. I knew that this was what I had to do. It was as if the crystals were telling me it's our time to start, helping the divine feminine awakening or whatever. And so a lot of it was just acknowledging this is what I'm doing, started speaking to people about it, developing more of the ethos and what was important and why this was needed in our society and in the world. And then I moved up to Santa Cruz, actually, because if you remember, I said I moved to LA in the first place to pursue music. So I actually moved up to Santa Cruz because I was invited to live in a shared house with other musicians.
Wow.
And so at this house in Santa Cruz, we lived basically on a huge quartz crystal rock and in the redwood forest and no internet or, whatever. And I met this amazing group of people, and specifically these women that inspired me so much just from being themselves. And we would sit in circles and discuss the different kinds of crystals that we thought would be beneficial for us and the shapes. We drew all the designs. I still have my notebook with everybody drew a little picture of what shape they would want. And so it started then. And then I finally, after a lot of research, I got the first prototypes and everybody tried it out, the first prototypes, and it was amazing. Everybody liked it, made some tweaks here and there. And then I moved back to New York shortly after that and really went forward with the business side.
That's so cool. I love how Chakrams is so inclusive, and the branding is even though it's a ritual and it's very ethereal, the branding is so strong.
Thank you.
And I just love how kind of edgy it is too.
Thank you.
So I'm curious if that was something you knew you wanted to do, or how did that happen?
Yeah, that was very intentional. I feel like something that makes Chakrams so strong is the branding, because it's funny because it's more digestible. The spiritual aspect of it is more digestible to people who may be interested in subtle energy systems and things like that, but feel that importance of the aesthetic, which is very important to me. So I love, a huge reason why I love crystals is just because of their beauty, and that's okay. And so whenever I was learning myself about crystals or energy or chakra systems, I felt like, why is everything so freaking cheesy about this stuff? I was very I love the meaning behind it. I love, everything that is available to us in an information on an information side. But when it comes to attracting people, I think it's important to have that aesthetic element. So I knew that the way that I branded was going to be, so
next
important
level,
and what, just how I would be attracted to learning something like this, which, is really about bringing it into the mainstream and making it accessible and relevant to everybody.
And I think it's really interesting to also talk about a lot of people, you might think that it's cool, but how do you open their world up to it and to trying it? And I think that's a next step that maybe people it's super hard for them to take.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious I'm sure it's obviously they'll just come upon it when it's their time.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting because we sell it in our store. People are like, what is this? I'm like, sex toys. But obviously I'll explain it to them a little more. But yeah, I'm just curious how.
There's a lot to it, and there's different avenues to walk somebody, down when talking about shock rubs, depending on what resonates with them. So, for example, if somebody is like, crystals are bullshit, and it's, I don't, healing energy, like that doesn't make sense to me. I say, that's okay. You don't have to actually feel a crystal vibrating in your hand to benefit from a shock rub. You can look at it in a more logical sense by understanding how your subconscious mind works. And when you give an object an intention and a meaning, you're strengthening that idea every time that you look at it, every time that you touch it. So even if you don't subscribe to crystal healing energy, it's hard to deny that your subconscious mind is so powerful. And if you see, okay, a rose quartz represents self-love, keeping my heart open. Every time now you reach for your shock rub and you're ready to have a session, as I call it, with the shock rub, you are strengthening that idea of keeping your heart open to love and all that stuff. So you're going to attract it no matter what. Yeah. So if somebody's not necessarily like
vibing,
I'll say
it's so true.
Go for a more logical stance. But I never try to force this on anybody. If you're not open to it, then it's not my place to try to get you to open to it. If you want to be open to it, then I will lead the way, but I'm not about, trying to make somebody believe in something that just doesn't resonate with them.
What's your overall mission with shock rubs? I feel that there's something so much deeper than just the crystals themselves. So I'm curious, coming from you.
There's a lot. A big part of the mission, I feel like, was accomplished. It's now in the mainstream. It's now accepted as a thing. And it's just given more attention that, okay, it's okay to need something more, an emotional connection to even an object. And it's okay to come out of the spirituality closet and acknowledge that we do feel energy. And it's okay to be mindful about who and what you put inside of your body. And it's, at the end of the day, it's mainly about acceptance. So, for me, it was a lot about accepting I am spiritual, accepting I am sexual, accepting I have darkness in me, accepting I'm a giver of love, as much as possible. All these things, it's about acceptance and healing, sexual trauma. I want to get to as many people as possible that would benefit from doing something really positive for themselves through crystal healing. So there's a lot.
Yeah. And so as you probably know, so Hugh Hefner just passed away yesterday. And there's a lot of, I see a lot of people commenting on it and mainly positive things, and also a lot of people happy about it. And I'm just curious, just what your thoughts are just on, what he's brought. Yesterday, I saw some video and like the quote was like him talking, and he's like, even nice girls like to have sex, And I just thought that was so interesting because it's true. Like like you said, we're all sexual, we're all spiritual. And I think it's just such a taboo to talk about, and it's not as much anymore. So it's so great. Like we're going down the right path, obviously. But I think even to think about, or people don't really like to talk about their sexual experiences. And I think it's really interesting. So I want to hear just what your thoughts are on that.
On Hugh Hefner.
On Hugh Hefner and just in general, sexuality. And
I think that everybody, humans are complex, so no matter who you are or what you create, there's going to be different perceptions for it. And you can be somebody who created this amazing platform and environment for sexuality to be expressed in a certain way. And whoever you are, how you look at that is going to reflect you, right? And how you view sex. And I did see something, an article, I forget the author's name, but they wrote on how things go past the creator. So Hugh Hefner created something that went beyond him. And so there were so many other people involved and so many people that were a part of this world that he created, but was very far removed from himself.
Mm-hmm.
Hugh Hefner himself, I mean, I've seen certain things from the women that lived at the house that seemed unhealthy to me personally, you know, and so I have some trepidation on praising him, but it doesn't take away from the fact that he created an environment for people who can look at sexuality, or wanted this platform to look at their sexuality in a really positive light and have it be that a positive affirmation for them. But with anything, there's always a dark and a light side, and things are complex. So depending on what angle you take, you know.
No, I totally agree. And that's how I found myself feeling yesterday, because I, especially like as a, you know, he was an editor, as he owned a magazine, right? So I was looking and thinking about how incredible the platform he created was. But then at the same time had so many thoughts about his personal maybe actions. And but again, like you said, like we all have a shadow, and there's like everything just teaches us something about ourselves, I think. So it's all a reflection of our thoughts inside too.
Exactly. Definitely.
So, you know, all the judgments we have, it's like, oh, what is that bringing up within me?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not that black and white, but it's a great way to think about and go tune in and see what's going on.
And that is what I feel is something with chakrams too. How you see this object, you know, that has this idea about sexuality, masturbation, self-love, crystals, spiritual components to it, how you view it. 'Cause I've gotten a few, some friends, you know, when I was first starting would be like, what the hell are you doing? This is insane. Like a friend of mine, he was like, yeah, I'm sure if I jerk off like every night and like I'll have a spiritual experience, you know, like just like saying like these things and like, you know, so it definitely is a reflection of what your relationship to sexuality is. Your relationship to your chakra really becomes a reflection of the relationship that you have with yourself and your sexuality and your spiritual practices, you know? So, and if you give it that attention too, like if you give it that purpose in your life, it'll show that even more.
Wow, that's so funny. It's good it's really interesting when you start something and just the commentary and, you know, everyone gives you and just to remember to like keep going and
definitely. Yeah. And surround yourself with people who are also go-getters and dreamers and have imagination, because some people that, you know, it's self-deprecating to tell somebody that their idea can't work or think of the issues of your idea. It's like when I'm talking about an idea with a friend, if they come to me with an idea, no matter how insane of an idea it is, I am with you trying to figure it out and talking about, okay, well, how can we make this work? And it's like for people, you know, they're like, you know, I remember my friends being like, aren't crystals jagged? Like, aren't crystals cold? Aren't crystals like, how would you, you know, and like thinking all this stuff is like, just tune it out. Don't listen to that. No. Everything is possible. You just have to figure it out.
Yeah. I love that you said imagination and figuring it out together. Those are two really big ones for sure. Instead of, it's just questioning together instead of, like you said, just isn't it this way? Instead of let's figure out a way.
Like that is so important. It's like help your friends, be excited. And if it's just in an idea phase, that idea phase is so fun. Who cares if it's not ever going to happen? Just talk with your friend about it and dream. And like, that's an exercise for your mind. And so it's like, there's nothing wrong with taking an idea that's so completely out there and trying to make it work.
Yeah, no, I love it. And actually that brings me to ask about your shadow line that you launched. When did you launch that?
Oh my God. It's been, I guess, almost a year now. Is that true?
I think that's so okay. You started chakrams in
I came up with a concept for chakrams in 2011. Didn't officially make a company until 2012.
Wow.
So then the shadow line, I guess, was made 2016. It came out.
So great.
Yeah.
And how's it doing?
Good. You know, for me, it was very much so an art project. All my products are actually copyrighted as sculpture. So I do consider them art. And the shadow line, ever since I started on my personal journey with chakrams, I felt within, you know, to bring it back, I felt this darkness or negative feeling in me that I didn't see as negative or dark, really. I saw it as just a part of me. And even talking about branding, I knew that doing this whole thing, talking about spirituality, it's very easy to get lost in the idea of the fashion of spirituality, which I never wanted to just feed into. I mean, it's so freaking easy to like just, I know what would sell even more probably considering like, you know, the fashion of spirituality, but that's not what it's about. To me, it's about being authentic. So the shadow line, since I started chakrams and working with the obsidian chakra, which I call the Zaga chakra myself, really understanding the shadow parts of who I am, I knew that I needed to put out a line of products that would reveal the sacred energy of these fetishes, you know, or like the darkness, and to basically make the statement that anything is spiritual if you give it the attention that it is. Anything is sacred once you give it that honor. And so for me, making objects that are, you know, for anal play or choking or gag balls, you know, or whatever it is, you know, was important because it's okay. It's cool. It doesn't make it any less than, you know, it's not about being righteous on this spirituality path and, oh, I'm going to Om and, you know, I'm going to like light this incense. Like, no, if you feel like yourself watching, you know, porn or like, you know, dressing, you know, in latex or whatever it is that has these taboos, even more so than just masturbation in itself, do that. That is you and that is right.
That's exactly what we think at the fullest. That's definitely, wellness isn't everything that you do. So it's just putting the intention on whatever you're doing and thinking about it. And if that's what you want to do and you're being conscious about it, then that's, you know.
Exactly. You can have a spiritual experience anytime.
Doing what?
Anytime.
Anything.
Yeah. It's just so about being open to it. Yeah.
I love that. I'm so glad that you're doing this work.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're doing such cool stuff. Like do you have chakrams at a museum right now?
Yeah.
Or Museum of Sex?
We're in the Museum of Sex and we're also at the Hammer Museum.
Cool. Yeah, I think I saw that too.
And I feel like I'm actually forgetting something. But
is there something in Berlin?
I was doing something with the art collective in Berlin, but it's taking some time. So yeah. There's honestly so much going on that it's hard for me to.
Cool. No, I love that.
Yeah.
It really is just so beautiful and a piece of art, and I love that you can use that and with your relationship with yourself or with other people or another person. I think that's so great.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm also coming out with a new line soon called the Forest line, which is going to involve wood and
like petrified wood?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, I'm trying.
That's so cool.
And I'm also writing a book that's going to be published next summer.
That's great.
So yeah, lots going on.
Cool. Yeah, I was going to ask like what else is in store?
Yeah. The book has been taking a lot of my attention, and it's scary and it's good, but
Yeah, so what are you discussing in the book? Like what's the concept?
So it's basically a lot of the philosophies that I've come to since starting chakrams, but it's using the chakra system as a map to self-discovery. So that's discovery of your own pleasure and using crystals as a foundation to ignite that. Wow. Yeah.
I want to read that right now. I need a copy of the manuscript.
I'll send you a copy when it's ready.
That's awesome. Oh, well, thank you so much for coming and chatting with me. And
thank you so much for
it's
having
so
me.
nice to meet you.
You
Finally,
too.
I love what you're doing, and I'm so honored that we can sell your products in our store and online.
Yeah, I'm so happy, and it's beautiful, everything that you're doing. So I'm really honored to be a part of it as well. And thank you so much for the matcha
Yeah,
too.
of course. Cheers.
Cheers.
Aw.